Ready? I call the Snoqualmie City Council meeting to order. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Holloway, can you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, City Clerk, please take the roll call.
Councilmember Jeans.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Holloway.
Here.
Councilmember Mayhew.
Here.
Councilmember Lassay has requested to be excused. Councilmember Sundwall.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd. Here. Mayor Larson.
I am here. Councilman, I have a motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Lassay from the meeting tonight.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Lassay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented tonight?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Shepherd.
Yeah, I'd like to remove the warrants and AB 19-111, and that's it.
Okay, any other discussion? Councilmember Jeans?
I'd like to add to the committee of the whole the matter of the next town hall meeting.
Okay, is there any objection to adding that item, council? All right, Councilmember Mayhew, did you have an item?
Yeah, I do, but I need to, I've forgotten my notes, so I have to recall
He
just by
wants
looking at it, but it's moving
smaller font.
constantly. Yeah.
While you're finding that, I'm going to go to
There we go.
Councilmember Ross. Go ahead.
I'd like to move AB 19-118, the resolution to purchase the SCBA equipment to under ordinance AB 19-120, which is the ordinance that appropriates the funding for these items.
Okay, so we will be addressing the ordinance first.
Right.
You just wanted to make sure that that in fact happens, that we addressed 120 prior to 118, is that correct?
Correct, but I also just might as well move it together. So do 120 first and then 118,
Okay,
because now we have another agenda.
all right, in other words, before going on to committee of the whole discussion. Do that.
And parks.
Well, before parks, because you just moved.
Yeah,
AB
that's
19-111.
an easy one. I think we'll be going in that sequence anyway, but thank you, okay. Remind me if I miss it. Councilmember Mayhew.
I'd like to ask for AB 19-117 to be taken off the consent agenda.
All right. So agenda bills 19, 111, and 117 have been removed from the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? 119 going once?
Both those go under F&A?
No.
117 goes with Parks and Public Works.
Water reclamation would go in Parks and Public Works. The consultant agreement, it looks like both are Parks and Public Works,
Yes,
correct? Yeah, okay,
I tried.
yeah. All right, if there's no further discussion with those amendments as noted, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. All right, so at this time, we're going to move on to public hearing presentations, proclamations, and appointments. And we have a fun evening where we have the honor of welcoming and swearing in two of our new officers, Austin Gutwine and Isaiah Clark. And I'll turn it over to Chief Phipps to cue things up and to clarify if I mangled the pronunciation of any of those names. A little, yeah. I wasn't sure if it was Gutwine or Gutwine right there.
I'll butcher it too, so it's okay. Isn't that awesome that they stand there? Well, thank you. This is hopefully the last two that I'm going to introduce to you for a little while anyway. But this is a great night for us after you hear a little bit about their backgrounds. They're both lateral entry, or lateral officers. In other words, they came from another police department. One of them came from the Seattle Police Department, and the other one came from Sitka, Alaska Police Department. One of them you may have seen already. He's probably been with us for at least a month, maybe two. Austin Gutwine is the first one I'll talk about a little bit. He's the one from Seattle PD. He was with Seattle for about 2 years before he came here. And during that short time that he was there, he's recommended for a life-saving award for entering a building to assist a critically ill citizen. And due to that action, it was believed that he saved that citizen's life. He graduated from Highland High School in Gilbert, Arizona, and attended ASU, Arizona State University. Now, what's amazing about this, when I first saw his resume, I found it hard to believe and understand, but once you talk to him, you can understand. He's very young, but he actually has founded a multi-million-dollar charity organization that worked with international organizations to assist other countries. He's been nationally recognized for his philanthropic efforts. And what's amazing is he's written 2 books. He's written 2 best-selling books for children. Obviously, he's an accomplished presenter, including a presentation at U.S. Air Force Academy. He resides in Bothell with his wife Kelsey and 1-year-old son Lincoln, who are right here. The next gentleman is obviously from Sitka, Alaska, where he graduated high school from. And when I was talking to him, he said that I asked him about coming here from Alaska, and he was concerned about I've never been up there, but the way he talks about it is extremely beautiful. Well, I think it's extremely beautiful here, so I know what his draw is. He's obviously got to work in some place that when you look around, you really appreciate what we have here. And he's coming from a place like that, but I think ours is just as good, and I've never been there, but I can't imagine any place better than this. He started at Sitka Police Department in 2015, and in a short time, 3 years, he was promoted to a sergeant. And that's pretty hard to do. Normally, it takes longer than that. I mean, in some agencies, 5 years, you're still considered a rookie. And 3 years, he was promoted to sergeant. During that time, in 2016, he was recognized as Employee of the Year, and he also received a life-saving award in 2016. He's an accomplished officer who's worked with the ATF, FBI, and allied investigative units. During his time there, he co-organized a joint task force with the U.S. Coast Guard and other allied law enforcement agencies focusing on trafficking of narcotics. Now, what's amazing about that is it's very difficult and hardly even, it's just not normal that you work with a federal agency like the Coast Guard to do something like this. Now, maybe in Alaska there's more opportunity for that, but that's credit to him to do that. And what he did was, he was actually attesting, he wanted to work here, but we had to put him on hold for a little while because of some things that came up. And so during that time, obviously, he was interested in moving back here. He made a promise to his wife that they would move back here in 10 years, and he's a man of his word. And so he was going to move back to this location in 10 years. And so he applied for King County Sheriff. Well, when we decided to move forward with that, it just so happened that we had the same background investigators that was doing this. And he said, hey, he's told me he really wants to work for you guys. Maybe if you guys speed it up a little bit, we can get him. So obviously, they'd already done a lot of the work with King County, and they were about ready to offer him the position. But he was willing to wait to work for this organization, which I'm very thankful for. His wife is not here tonight, Angie. They had a baby boy, I believe, 2 weeks ago. They just moved here. All his property and possessions were like 3 weeks late, and now she has a baby. I don't know how he's doing. He's got this new job. It's pretty amazing. And then he has a 2-year-old daughter as well. So I'd like to welcome both of you to this beautiful community of Snoqualmie. Come up and give you the oath of office.
Ask that you raise your right hand and repeat after me, please. I state your name. Having been duly appointed. By the mayor of the city of Snoqualmie. To the office of police officer of the city. Of Snoqualmie. Washington. Do solemnly swear. That I will faithfully. And impartially perform. The duties of my office. As prescribed by law. And to the best of my ability. that I will support and maintain
that I will support and maintain
the ordinances of the city of Snoqualmie
the ordinances of the city of Snoqualmie
and the laws and the Constitution
and the laws and Constitution
of the state of Washington
of the state of Washington
and of the United States of America.
and the United States of America.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, General.
I'll need one back. I get one and they get two.
Now for the badge pinning, Kelsey, if you want to come up and Captain Almquist. You guys can go ahead and stand out front there. One-handed. There it is. Impressive. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Get some pictures real quick.
Why don't you get some of your family, bring your family up here, that you never should see around.
Come on.
You want to see, yeah, one of them. It's not a big warm welcome to the family. I also want to say on behalf of the council and the residents of the city, thank you to the families, because we know you'll be giving up a lot of holidays and other special times so that your loved ones can serve our community. And that's deeply appreciated.
Uh-oh.
That's a good one, right?
That's not the first time.
No, I want to. Asthma, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Congratulations again, gentlemen. Welcome aboard.
Nice to meet you. Congratulations.
And a big thank you for all those that came out to support him tonight, too. All right, so at this time, we're going to, there is a proclamation on Domestic Violence Awareness Month. There is not a representative to pick that up, but it is in the agenda packet. So for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. To citizens' comments, at this time, we'll provide a time for citizens to comment on items that are not on the agenda. First, a few ground rules. One, the Snoqualmie citizens who are not present have a right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of the city in an efficient and orderly manner. Therefore, we have to limit the comments for those that do come to the meeting to 3 minutes each. So second, please wait to be recognized. Come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. 3, direct your comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members. In order to protect the privacy rights of employees and protect members of the public from legal liability, please note that this is not an appropriate venue to make complaints or accusations about an implied or named city employee or agent. Such oral comments will not be allowed, but can be submitted in writing to the city clerk. 4th, please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the council, mayor, or staff, or to engage in debate. The council will quietly and respectfully listen to your concerns. 5th, please respect the decorum of these proceedings, as all due respect will be afforded to you. And last, this is election time of the year, so in compliance with election laws, please refrain from any political campaigning in violation of RCW 42.17A.555. So with that, is there anybody at this time that would like, sorry, The consent agenda. Jimmy, you good? All right. All action items listed below will be enacted in one motion. Action items include minutes for the September 9th, 2019 council meeting and Agenda Bill 19119. Resolution 1518 approving the City of Snoqualmie's allocation for the Northeast King County Regional Public Safety Communication Agency NORCOM budget. Do I have a motion, council?
So moved as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on any of these items prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, any discussion, council? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Moving on to ordinances, Finance Administration Committee, ordinance, or Agenda Bill 19109, ordinance amending ordinances 1210 and 1213, adopting and amending the 2019 to 2020 biennium budget. This is for the 2020 to 2025 non-utilities capital improvement plan amendment and providing for severability and an effective date. This was introduced on the 9th and is ready for action tonight.
Move to adopt ordinance number
1220.
1220, amending ordinances 1210 and 1213, adopting and amending the 2019-2020 biennial budget, 2020 through 2025 non-utilities capital improvement plan amendment, and providing for severability and an effective date. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 19109 as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? All right, seeing no one move forward, council, is there any discussion?
Well, I would like, there were some questions of what funds went to where in all of this transaction. I would like staff to.
We'll let Drew address that then. Go ahead, Drew.
Good evening, council. So in essence, what is the purpose of this budget amendment? Well, one, the primary or the objective of this ordinance is to true up the budget, especially for 2020, with the non-utility CIP that we adopted recently. Secondly, another objective is the consolidation of funds. What we've produced here is a table, in essence, to provide reassurance to the council members of where the funds recommended for closure will go. And so, just if we want to take a look at this, also it's been included as a part of your agenda packet. I've got a table here that essentially describes the fund name, estimated beginning fund balance for 2020, estimated revenues, transfers in, estimated expenditures, transfers out, and estimated ending fund balance. In essence, what you will find in this table is you'll find that the transfers out correspond in certain breakouts to the transfers in other funds. So for example, to follow along, if you take a look at Fund 005, the Street Overlay Reserve Fund, you'll see that there is a transfer out of approximately $735,000. If you go under the Transportation Capital Fund, you will see therefore in a transfer in column as well for $735,000. And so in essence, what we're doing is we're providing a reconciliation for the recommended closure of those funds.
Councilmember Shepherd.
So I'm looking at the council agenda. Well, one of the links didn't work for me, and that was the 2020-2025 non-utilities capital improvement plan link. So I'm not sure what that had. But under the council agenda report, you say that the possible drawbacks of this restructuring include an increase in the amount of work required to separate and track fund balances by their reserved, restricted, or unrestricted status, and an increase in the potential number or complexity of arbitrage. And I'm not through yet, so don't interrupt. But I also went back and I looked at when we actually created the fund. And at that time, they had reasons why they wanted to create the fund for I'm just looking at the first fund that you want to move out. And that has to do with the Street Overlay Fund. And I guess once you take that away, we won't have Street Overlay Fund anymore, according to this. And also, they talked about when in, I guess, 2014, they actually set it up. It sounds like there was a real need to set aside money for the Snoqualmie Parkway to be redone. And they needed about $3 million. And in that process, they went through a number of funds that they were, monies that were coming in, that first they were going to set aside $750,000, and then after they set aside that $750,000, they were going to add more money depending on I guess there was a utility tax that if it was no longer being used for a different purpose, that it could be put into this fund. And I don't know if that's been happening. I assume it has. And then there was supposed to be another $100,000 that was supposed to be going into that fund each year since that time. And on top of that, there was, let's see, then I guess anticipating what should be coming in 2020, the money that was supposed to be coming from this one fund was supposed to be put up against possibly getting a grant in order to redo the Snoqualmie Parkway. So it looked like there was just a lot of analysis and thought that went into setting up the fund to begin with, and this is one of all of the funds that you're proposing to remove. I'm concerned about just wholesale taking these funds out. So the resolution I'm referring to is 1255. And that happened back in May of 2014. So I'm just a little concerned about the moving money around like this. I think I'd rather not, personally. I think we should leave it as it is.
Councilmember Mayhew?
Yeah, so just to remind fellow council members, we just recently went through a process of approving a 6-year non-utilities capital improvement plan. What is particularly notable, in my view, about that plan is that for the first time, this city has looked out 6 years and budgeted for all of the categories, all of them. Now, we've had capital improvement plans, but they didn't comprehensively lay out the needs and comprehensively list the funding. This is the first time that's ever happened. One of the reasons that can happen is that we can now see out and predict with relative confidence what the revenues are going to be over that 6-year period and what the needs are. And for the first time, we have revenues that can actually cover comprehensively all of those needs. So transportation, parks, and facilities. So one of the things that you clearly see in that CIP is that $735,000 doesn't even begin to cover the street overlay needs that we have, even in those 6 years. But in that CIP, it's actually been laid out comprehensively. So I think that in the past, when these funds were set up, there was a council that was struggling to take the limited funds that they had, and they were trying to set them aside for as much as they could for the biggest needs that they thought were out there. The fact is they didn't have enough funds to cover all those needs. Now we've actually laid out a comprehensive way to cover that. So so what they did is they set up some of these separate funds to try and sort of sock away some money. Now what we've got is a comprehensive plan with 3 categories, and what the city's doing here is they're saying, let's take all of these separate funds and let's combine them into those 3 categories: transportation, parks, and facilities. Let's get all the monies that go together, let's put them there, and then match them up with the comprehensive list of expenditures that we approved in that 6-year CIP. So that's why they're doing this, and it makes a ton of sense. We can see the total funding that's available. For example, we can see Fund 310, transportation. We can see $3.4 million at the end of doing this, as opposed to $124,000 at the beginning, which doesn't match up with the amount of transportation spending that we need to have. So this is a simplification. It puts the funds by those major categories that then we can match up in the CIP with those major categories of expenditure. And so this makes it much more understandable for us, for the public, and the side benefit is it makes it a lot easier for the accounting staff. For what it's worth, we have something like 50% more funds than a city like Sammamish, which is over double our size, has. So we're getting to the kind of bookkeeping requirements that make sense. It'll help us understand it and it'll help the public understand it. So I think it's a fantastic idea.
Just to go off that fact that you provided there for just a second, we maintain 46 funds for budgeting purposes, which is greater than an 11-city average of 27. The city of Sammamish has 11 funds that they budget for. Issaquah has 31, and Bellevue has 28.
Councilmember Shepherd?
So how do we know what money is being set aside for Snoqualmie Parkway as far as being resurfaced?
Well, what money have we set aside for Snoqualmie Parkway that's going to be resurfaced? I think, first off, that's a question for 2021 and 2022. Secondly, we've provided several summary charts as a part of the CIP to show the breakout of revenues and expenditures over a 6-year period. You can tell that by the end of this period, the city of Snoqualmie will still have a pretty significant fund balance by this period.
And a project like that is going to be contingent. I think our projection is, we're hoping to do upwards close to 100%, but we're conservatively estimating, I think it was 73% in the CIP, that of the funding for the parkway would come from grants.
Mm-hmm.
We have a history of some level of confidence about getting those grants, but until we actually secure them, there's no way to know that what those exact numbers will be. But Councilmember Mayhew?
Yeah, so one of the key things for us to understand is in smaller cities, a decade, 2 decades ago, when this was a much smaller city, the idea of taking separate funds to kind of track your money you're setting aside for different projects is an idea. It's something that you see in smaller cities. As you grow to the size of city that we are now, or indeed start to get larger, there's just too many projects. The accounting task of tracking 150, 200 funds becomes horrific, and it doesn't really help anyone, it just confuses everyone. So what happens is that you take the money and put it into the categories. So a question like, where's the money for, a particular park? The answer is, you don't set up a fund with money for a particular park. You set up money for all of the parks, and you sort of track that out, and then you separately list out your projects that you're going to do over your 6-year period, and as you look out farther, and you look for a matchup between the money that you've planned for that category, parks, say, and all of the park projects that you have planned for that period. So that's exactly what this is doing. And so you can actually look and say, okay, transportation. I see all the money across the 6 years, and I see this whole list of projects that we're going to do against that. But we don't do an individual fund for each one of those. We see it in total where it's understandable.
So that hits upon one point. Part of the goal of this consolidation is to improve the consistency of funds from year to year. It kind of reduces the need to add or delete funds every 2 or 3 years, for example, or even change the name of a fund. Sometimes a capital project does not happen. Often as a result of that, staff is tasked after attaining council authority of transferring funds elsewhere or repurposing a fund with a different name. Our goal here is to strive for the permanence of funds that will change little from year to year. We've got a number of single kind of project funds going through. You can talk about the River Street and SR 202 pedestrian signal fund, for example, that is only going to exist for a limited period of time. What I think is beneficial to everyone's understanding about our fund structure is that fund maintains its consistency and exists from year to year to year to year to year.
All right, is there any further discussion, council? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, motion is carried. Moving on to, excuse me a moment. Agenda Bill 19120, ordinance amending ordinance numbers 1210, 1213, and I have a 12 blank in my notes. Is there supposed to be another number in there?
The number of this.
Of what was just passed.
Oh, of 1221. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ordinance numbers 1210, 1213, and 1221, adopting and amending the 2019 to 2020 biennial budget and providing for severability and effective date. This will be introduced in an emergency action for action tonight. So if you could read in both the summary and motion statement, please.
The intent of this ordinance is to amend the 2019-2020 biennial budget to appropriate funds for Fire Equipment Replacement Fund 011, commensurate with the approved purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, equipment. Move to declare that pursuant to City Council Rule of Procedure 9.6.4, an emergency exists justifying waiver of the requirement for a second reading under Rule of Procedure 9.6.2.2, and adopt ordinance amending, what, 1220?
Correct.
1221.
Amending 1221, ordinances 1210, 1213, and 1220, adopting and amending the.
And 1221.
1221, well, wait, let's back up here. And adopting ordinance amending, so that's a new ordinance number, correct? So it'd be 1222?
1221.
1210, 1213, and,
Right, what's the number?
Go up a
of this
line.
ordinance?
The new one.
What's this?
okay, which is it, guys?
1220.
And 12,
We're amending.
yeah, then I read it in wrong. 1220, is it 21 or 20? You're getting everybody confused here.
Well, there's two blanks.
They're adopting 1221. The previous ordinance was 1220, which is now this blank number.
I don't care what the previous one was. All I want to know is what is the language he's supposed to repeat back right now? Give him that exactly.
Let's start at the beginning. So adopting ordinance amending, give me a number.
That would be 1221.
1221. I had to go back here because my eyes aren't that good. Ordinances 1210, 1213, and 1220.
20.
Adopting and amending the 2019-2020 biennial budget and providing severability and effective date. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second as eloquently stated by Councilmember Holloway.
Less than eloquently, but all right.
All right. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? All right, seeing no one move forward, is there any discussion, council?
Mayor, if I could.
Bob, go ahead.
That first one should have been stricken. I think that just shouldn't be a blank in there.
No.
There's a blank.
Well, it's the word amending that's causing it.
Yes.
I think what would be helpful in the future is to actually have the final language for the agenda.
We apologize for that.
All right. All right, we got it right, so let's move on. Any Councilmember Sunwell?
So we're being asked to waive the second reading on this, right, due to an emergency?
Correct.
Right.
I didn't see anywhere in the documentation what the emergency is.
I'll ask the chair of the Public Safety Committee to go ahead and update.
And that's on AB 19-118. It is purchasing the self-contained breathing apparatus. The manufacturer's warranty has expired, and the fire department thought the warranty would expire at the purchase date, so that would be next year, but it actually expired this year. And so that means 10 of our 20 bottles for the SCBA's are out of compliance and can no longer be hydro-tested, which certifies them for use by the firefighters. And there's different benefits of what they're planning to purchase, which is the Scott brand. And so they want to go ahead and get authorization to purchase those. And so we need to appropriate the funds out of this particular account, the Fire Equipment Replacement Fund, in order to purchase the items.
Mike, could you speak to what's the time urgency on this? Why wasn't it brought forward in a more timely manner to allow for the two introductions or the introduction?
It had to do with, as Councilmember Ross mentioned, we had the dates wrong. We originally thought that the date of purchase was going to be the date of expiration of the bottles. There's 10 of our 20 bottles that are out of date. We thought it was supposed to be next year, which was the date of the manufacturer.
Yeah.
So that would have been next year, so that's why it got bumped up, is because it was the date of purchase. And so we currently have, of our 20 bottles that we have in the department, there are 10 that can't be certified and be retested to be able to be used by the firefighters.
Councilmember Sunwell.
Question for you. In the most recent house fire, how many of those 20 bottles did you use?
I would be guessing, based on the amount of personnel that we had on scene, they each went through at least 2 bottles, so probably it would have been at least 8 bottles would have been used at a minimum.
So you're borderline not able to safely fight a fire without these?
The way it is currently, yes, we've made plans. We moved the bottles that are currently not certified to our backup engines, so there's less chance that they would be used. And when I say that they're not certified, it just means that every 5 years they have to be hydro tested. And so if we took them back in to be hydro tested, which they're due for in January, they wouldn't re-hydro test them, allowing us to be used again.
That sounds like an emergency. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion, council? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And then we're going to jump down to, from reports, Agenda Bill 19118, Resolution 1517, waiving competitive bidding requirements for the purchase of the self-contained breathing apparatus SCBA equipment and authorizing the purchase thereof.
The fire department relies upon the use of various types of equipment to protect its firefighters engaged in fighting fires or responding to other hazardous conditions. Self-contained breathing apparatuses, which provide firefighters with a fresh source of air and protects them from smoke, fumes, or other substances or chemicals that they might otherwise inhale while responding to an emergency. The department needs to promptly replace its current Scott brand SCBA equipment, which is over 15 years old and outside of the manufacturer's warranty period, thereby increasing its maintenance costs and rendering at least half of the SCBA bottles out of compliance and ineligible for certification and servicing. The purchase of the Scott SCBA equipment would allow the Snoqualmie Fire Department to put the SCBA packs in service in the fastest possible time frame, as very little training would be needed due to the Snoqualmie Fire Department's internal familiarity with Scott equipment and Scott service technicians it has used for the past 15 years. Move to approve Resolution 1517, waiving competitive bidding requirements for the purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus SCBA equipment and authorizing the purchase thereof.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second is stated by Councilmember Ross. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, any discussion, council? Councilmember Mayhew.
Just want to confirm, my understanding is that's exactly what this fund was set aside, was to purchase these items when they were needed. It just wasn't appropriated this year because we didn't think it was going to be this year. But in fact, that's exactly what these funds have always been set aside for. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, I wanted Mike to speak to that too, because I think that's just it's a good story to tell about the council historically being fiscal, showing some fiscal discipline and moving towards sustainability too, like the fleet program, to make sure that we're putting money into a reserve fund every year such that when this kind of equipment or vehicles need replacement, those funds are there ready to go, so we're not suddenly in a fiscal crisis trying to figure out how we're going to pay for things. So I don't think the fund in the department budget quite covered this completely, but
That's correct. It was just, from what I understand, it was just the funds were in the budget. They just weren't moved into our fire department budget to, that budget, I believe, at this point only has 15,000 in it. So it just wasn't added to the general budget this year. But the funds are there and they've been planned on for years. It just, that previous agenda bill was to get the funds moved over the way they should have been at the beginning of the budget.
or appropriated as
Appropriate,
Councilmember,
yeah.
yes, as Councilmember Mayhew spoke to. So, all right, any further discussion, council? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. All right, we're backing up a little bit to, sorry? All right, got to catch. So we're coming on to the Parks and Public Works Committee. We're going to go back and grab a couple of those agenda bills from the consent agenda. Agenda Bill 19111, Agreement for Consultant Services with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants Incorporated for the River Street Embankment Protection Amendment, number 1.
This agenda bill provides the First Amendment to the Task Order 39 with the City on-call contractor Northwest Hydraulic Consultants for revetment design at the record office site, adding $71,230 in costs for a new project total of $432,729. Design is reimbursed via a separate agreement with King County. The new task order total is within the approved King County agreement amount and within funding levels adopted in the 2019 2020 city budget of $568,119. Move to approve agreement for consultant services with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, Inc. for the River Street Embankment Protection Amendment Number 1 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 19117 as stated by Councilmember Sunwell. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, Councilmember Sunwell.
Before we have Nicole step up and do a better job of explaining this than I do, just as a reminder, 2 weeks ago, this was pulled at the last minute from the agenda due to late information from a lower-level King County employee who thought that we might not get all the funding that we thought, the reimbursement money. So wisely, that was pulled. Nicole talked to the right people, and it was reaffirmed that this would fall within the reimbursement threshold and be an acceptable reimbursable expense, and so it's back on.
All right.
How'd I do?
Nicole, before I turn it over to the council for further discussion, is there anything else you want to report on, or? Okay. Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so I noticed that in the contract, it says the county will not pay for markup, and I noticed that we have markup fees in the contract from our vendor. And I also noticed that we're increasing the cost of this project by 20%, and we're at the pre-design stage of this project. And I'm a little concerned because we've got, I guess we have to drill 3 borings into
Riverbank.
what is it called? The deepest part of the river.
The Thalweg?
The Thalweg, yes. They're 20 to 30 feet below the Thalweg. And I don't know what's the difference between where that is and where our aquifer is. But on top of that, I'm thinking about my tour of the high school recently and how they, after getting into that large project, they realized that they had to put posts down into the ground way deeper than they had originally anticipated, and it made the cost of the project much more than they had originally anticipated. And I'm really concerned that this could be a real big, expensive project. And prior to us working on it this year, it was under the responsibility or jurisdiction of King County to handle this. And now we are kind of taking over the reins of this project. And I'm a little concerned that this could be an unexpected, very expensive project. And I'm having second thoughts about the project in general.
Okay, I think
Nicole, let's have Bob Sturbank speak to the markup question at first.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, the contract with the county that I think Councilmember Shepherd referred to initially requires the county to reimburse the city for the actual cost incurred by the city to perform the tasks. And it's the no markup provides that the city can't mark up the costs that we're charged and then charge the county a markup for city administration of the contract. But this contract language allows us to pass on the actual costs that we incurred through NHC. So I don't view the markup language of the contract as any bar to any part of the NHC revision that Nicole is here to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, and Nicole, I don't know if it's in your wheelhouse, but maybe Brian can speak to it, but I'm not aware of any aquifer that we have that's less than 300 feet deep. Most are 700 feet deep. So this thing isn't even touching the surface compared to the depth of the aquifers. There's no question about any sort of threat to aquifers. And then thirdly, whether it's this building, the high school, or other projects, or the Railway Conservation Center that had those piers built, those are carrying the weight of structures on top of them. There's no structure on these piers being put in it simply for erosion purposes on the bank. The only weight is the weight of a asphalt street. So I think the risk is little to none that there's any of this cost escalation comparing it to those type of projects. So Nicole, go ahead.
Right. So I think I got most of the items. That is correct about the aquifer, so we're still very shallow compared to puncturing any sort of aquifer concerns, so that is correct. The markup referred to that you'll see in a lot of the invoices that we receive from the consultant is actually covering consultant costs. When consultants have a subcontractor, they actually have to pay taxes on those costs out, and so it's a standard 10% coverage of contract fees. Almost every consultant I've seen has that standard markup. And I think there's a small portion that also covers their admin costs to pay the subcontractor and then reintegrate that in their billing to us. So that's a pretty standard item. And then that is also correct around the seismic considerations that basically for high schools where or buildings, you do need substantial piers to support buildings on top of them, whereas this one, we've had some preliminary analysis, this is paying for more, but it's basically taking a look at existing, we've already done the borings, so basically looking at the existing seismic considerations and then different ways to mitigate for seismic as considerations as well as erosion under rapid drawdown, like if, say Snoqualmie Falls, all of a sudden there was a dam burst or something and the water came down very suddenly. That's also something they're looking at, as well as low flow conditions of the river, all of which will change the erosive stability of that bank. So basically these are all, when we were talking with King County, basically our conversations with them revealed that they probably would not have done as much analysis for these things, but we talked with them and said, we have a water main that's going through that corner as well as the traffic support of the existing road. So we know that we have certain minimum thresholds of security and stability that we seek for that bank. And this analysis will help to ensure that whatever we construct there will remain stable around through a variety of potential circumstances. And that's something that King County wouldn't do for all projects because a lot of their riverbanks don't have quite the same facilities nearby. But that's something that we said they ought to cover and they ultimately agreed. So that's what this is covering at this time.
So in the.
Councilmember Holloway?
So, and as part of this process, you're actually looking at 3 different design options?
We are looking at 3 different design options. And I'll say we're looking at 3 different design options in 2 different ways. We're looking at 3 different design options in the sense of what we will result with for top of bank widths. And then we're also looking at 3 different design options to achieve minimum factors of safety for those other conditions that I discussed. So pilings is one of those options. They've also suggested additional rock at the toe. And then also if we lay it back, we might hit those minimum thresholds of stability without additional mitigation, such as pilings. So thankfully, at this stage, we still have some time to figure out the design options that will affect those top of bank designs.
And ultimately, what is projected to be the final cost of this project?
Yes.
The point is, until we do this work, we don't really know what this project, we know at a rough estimate, this will give us a tighter estimate of what the project will cost, and will give us the option to consider those options as a council, which way we go. If you don't do this, you don't know nothing to make anything a decision on, and you have a utility line where we've already had issues at this spot.
Well, we're going with the more costly conservative estimate at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. Assuming it could be nothing but better. Councilmember Mayhew, did you have your hand up? Okay, Councilmember Shepherd?
So in the past, King County has done this, right?
Councilmember Shepherd, if you could get that microphone maybe a little closer. I think folks are straining to hear you.
Okay, and so in the past, King County has done this work, correct?
King County did an emergency repair at the site at some point in the past, and they have done similar types of projects at other sites, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but King County approached the city, or rather, we had mutual conversations where because of the Riverwalk in this area and because of city concerns for the infrastructure of this area, they suggested that we take on project management. That also is helpful to them because they have too many projects and too little staff. And so since it is within our city limits and we care about the eventual look of this area and the safety, the infrastructure it contains, we agreed it would be mutually beneficial for this arrangement to occur.
So will we have ongoing responsibility in the future for this?
In terms of maintenance, once the revetment is constructed, King County will resume maintenance responsibility for that revetment.
Okay.
Is that the flood district that does that, or?
Yeah, the King County acting as the agent of the flood district does that.
Yeah, okay. All right, any further discussion, council? Nicole, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda Bill 19119, Resolution 1518, approving the City of Snoqualmie's allocation of the, I'm sorry, that was the only one you actually kept there. Agenda Bill 19117, Water Reclamation Facility Phase 2 Improvements, change order number 002.
Construction of the water reclamation facility improvements Phase 2 is approximately 99, is that exact? 99%? Complete with project closeout anticipated within 90 days. During later stages of construction, several small changes have necessitated out-of-scope services by the contractor. Change order number 2 represents a final revision to the contract with Prospect Construction with a total of $65,206 for additional out-of-scope services. Move to approve water reclamation facility Phase 2 improvements, change order number 002, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Have motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 19119 as stated by Councilmember Sunwall. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, although, any discussion, Councilmember Sunwall?
So again, they'll do the heavy lifting on this, but this is what I will characterize as an exceedingly rare instance in which we have gone over budget on a capital project. Most of the time, we have Saxton and others in here talking about how they saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars, even 7 figures sometimes. You have the lucky task of a very uncommon situation where we just, by I believe a couple $100,000, you'll explain, dollars that we just missed on this one, and that happens. But if you're keeping a score at home, we're 7 figures. Since I've been on council 2.5 years, we're in 7 figures in the green on how we've saved money from projects in terms of against a budget. So there you go.
And that might actually be the case on this one too. The challenge here is trying to understand how we originally came.
Jeff, hang on a second. Councilmember Mayhew, what?
Well, I was the one that pulled this off of consent, and just in the interest of saving everyone time.
Okay.
I don't have any question about this aspect. My question, it might be helpful.
Go
just to
ahead,
jump
yeah,
to
we
where the
could
question
maybe make
is.
this more expeditious.
Yeah, I think, although I do appreciate those comments, and I think that's very important to set the context, and I'm aware of it, and I think it's important that we're all aware of the good track record that we have. There's a few questions I have that this gives us the chance maybe to talk about, and it may be that we decide to refer some of these questions to committee, but I just want to share some of the concerns that I have when I look at this. So I think the two concepts that I think sometimes people get a little confused on is the difference between being over, because we use this term over budget, but sometimes we use it, different people use it to mean different things. So what we have is we have an original amount that the city budgeted for this project, as they do for every project. Then they put it out to bid. What almost always is the case is that the bid is lower than that budget. So then we authorize that contract, which means we've authorized an amount to be spent on the project that's lower than the total budget we approved. Okay, and then what happens is they go out and they do that, and sometimes, as in this case, there are change orders that then cause them to be above the original contracted amount, which sometimes is referred to as being over budget. But I think this is the point that Councilmember Sunwall was just making. Almost always, our guys are still within the original budget that we approved. So what I'm curious about here is, in this case, so I'm curious about how, now that we have this comprehensive CIP, and we're managing against a total number, we talked about this earlier when we did the budget ordinance, I think it's helpful to think about how is this all going to be reported in? How is that going to be reported into Parks and Public Works? How will that come forward to the council? How will we kind of see and monitor what's going on so that we can see in one place, okay, here's what we originally budgeted and appropriated. Well, the appropriated will be part of a big appropriation, but how much did we budget or authorize? Then how much did we actually approve for the contract? And then with these change orders, sort of, where's that falling in there? So I don't know that I necessarily am going to get an answer to that tonight. I more wanted to put the question out there and sort of share the idea. I think we need to get some reporting and some agreement as to how we're going to monitor those things going forward. The second thought I had is, I'm not clear, and I apologize, I know that we've talked about in this past, but I've never gotten quite clear on how the sequence of events works when we have a change order, a change in the scope of work that's needed, that goes above the amount that we've approved for the contract. And if the requirement that we've set is that amount should not be spent above what we've authorized, then I'm concerned in instances where our staff may be approving an amount above what we've authorized without our approval, and that we get an approval a chance to approve it after the fact, which I would say really isn't an opportunity to approve it because we don't have any choice at that point. The work's been done. Now, I may not be understanding that correctly, but that's my concern. But I also think that often we don't mean to slow things down in the way I just described we might be, because I think overruns within a certain amount, I think we would intend to authorize the administration to spend within that. I think these is the contingencies that we usually put on each of these contracts, but I'm not exactly sure how that works and what our approval then is. So if we've authorized them to spend into a contingency, then we probably shouldn't be approving it after the fact when we can't disapprove it, but possibly we'd have to approve some increase in the contingency amount in case there are additional contingencies. I'm just not clear how that works. So I want to bring that up.
Can we take
Yeah,
that?
is it helpful to answer these as I
Well,
go?
can we take, I'm not sure, it's a more overarching procedural question than a question specifically on this project.
It is an overall procedural, not so much with this. I understand what happened here, although I do have one question that's specific to this project, but I think
But
those
can-
are questions that maybe should go to
That question you
committee.
have there, can we take the F&A?
I think both of those could go to committee to sort of look into.
Yeah, which committee?
I would think Parks and Public Works.
Well, it can go, I would suggest it can go to either. Parks and Public Works is where this is going to manifest itself the most. However, you can make an argument that it goes to F&A because now we're talking about financial philosophy, really, about how we want to. I mean, this goes to the conversation we tried to have 3 or 4 months ago around, this $10,000 limit or whatever we have.
Authorization levels for the
Authorizations, right? And so I think
administration.
this is a good trigger to have that conversation. I think we need to get back to where we were on having that broader conversation, even above and beyond projects like this, where we're talking about spending authority, so that we are appropriately being stewards of the public's money, but at the same time, not the fact that we meet every 2 weeks, not being a hindrance into work getting done. And so I would actually suggest, not to punt, but I would actually suggest this probably gets taken up in F&A because it's going to be a master plan over everything that deeply impacts the committee I chair, but not just my committee.
And Jeff, as I recall, we have been briefing the committee members on this project and some of those cost overruns or the change orders. But I think you make an excellent point, Councilman Mayhew. I think it maybe should occur to us to have brought to the council a question about, hey, we're exceeding the project budget. We want to get a thumbs up to proceed and then bring back the final amendment or approval.
I
So
think that'd be great.
it's a good policy question to bring up. We had that, I think, happen on a change order in the Canyon Springs one too, and we were committed to do some house cleaning there, so it seems like we're
So it helps us as a council see kind of how this is fitting together.
Yeah.
And by the way, a chart that's showing us all the projects and kind of how this totals up will portray exactly what Councilmember Sunwall brought up a little while ago, which is you'll see all of the projects and look, many of them are under budget. So I think that's helpful to put in context. But if we can understand it, then I think that helps the public understand it as well.
All right, Councilmember Shepherd.
Okay, so I looked at this, and it looks like the change order was like 1.2% increase in the contract amount.
1.64% in the contract.
It's very
price.
small.
Very small for a
And-
project like this, yeah.
And the documentation was excellent,
Yeah,
very detailed, and lots of pictures. I love the pictures.
okay, good.
But one question that I have, I understand that we're 99% done on this. Are we going to be able to see a certificate of completion when it's finished?
Of course, yeah.
When somebody goes and inspects it and it's an engineer and they put their stamp on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Sunwall and then Councilmember Mayhew. Go ahead. He's deferring.
Yeah, so, and then the last question I had is, so if I'm understanding this correctly, in the end, we will be $411,150 over, I'm going to use the word over budget. Is that over contract or over, I believe that it's actually over budget, is that correct?
Yeah, you said it really well in the beginning, council member. There's really two budgets, right? There's the contract, which is the contract that we have with the constructor, the contractor. And there is the budget, which the city creates before the project, where, which we consider the project budget, right? Now, one of the difficult things we have, and you said it well, we have a hard time going back in time and reconstructing what that initial budget was, because that was identified in one place. And what you said, Mr. Saxberg, used to come up here and say, I can save us a whole bunch of money by bundling these projects. Well, this is one of those projects where we did a lot of bundling, right? But when we did that bundling, we didn't carefully account for all of the projects and all those budgets that we bundled into it. Now, I saw in some of Todd's paperwork, some of his old worksheets, where he assumed that we were bundling about $14 million worth of projects, all right? Not the $11,600,000, but I can't find where that was ever accounted for, or where, I couldn't find that. So all I can really do is go back and say, all right, we did the Vactor decant facility. We did, the solids thing. We did a couple of these. We did 3 projects for sure that were in the CIP that have budgets that I can account for, right? All the other stuff, I don't know. I can't find that. So we're $411,000 over what we can account for. But I think that this bundling of projects saved us money as opposed to putting us over what we anticipated spending on all this work to begin with.
All right, so the reason I ask you that is I think that now that we have this, and again, kudos to you guys, it's just a fantastic document, this CIP now that we have. And I think if we use that as a base to go back against, we've got the projects there, we've got the amounts, and if we then build, this is whether it's percentage of completion or timing kind of reports you give us, or on budget, under budget, over budget reports that you give us, if we keep tying back to that, that's going to be a fantastic tool for us, I think.
Yeah.
So here's the last question I have, which is, since we do have a CIP, and earlier tonight we just adjusted our appropriations to match the CIP, if we're over by 411,000, the implication to me is that means either we're going to have to cancel some project or projects equal to 411,000, or move them out to a subsequent year because we're now short in the total. Is that a reasonable thing to think or not?
Yeah, or there's another assumption to be made that there are some projects that we just won't do, right? Or
Right, that was my
won't have to
first,
do,
yeah. Oh,
right.
that we won't have to do, okay.
Won't have to do.
Because they were bundled,
Or to Councilmember Sunwall's point, there's several projects that came in under budget,
that
Right.
maybe have an offset.
make up that offset, yeah, more than make up the offset.
That's my question is, could you just, do you know and I know you may not have a detailed accounting for it, but do you know the answer to that as you sit here? Do you believe that we are going to have to defer or not do projects because of this over budget, or do you believe that we're going to be okay on the total budget?
I think we're going to be okay on the total budget for several reasons. One, we've identified a couple projects which we don't think we have to do. Others which I think we can bundle. One in particular, a sewer line, which standing alone would cost quite a bit, but since we have some similar work in the area, we can bid it at the same time and reduce the cost. So we can probably do that for about half of, there's $200,000 and $300,000.
So without going to the
savings.
details, your policy level message to us is you think we're okay?
I think we're okay, yeah.
All right, so then just maybe in the committee, we could take up how that could sort of work its way into reporting so that we can all see that in the future.
Yeah.
Councilmember Holloway.
No, pass.
All right. Councilmember Jeans.
So when this gets to committee, I mean, I suppose you have to consider whether it's a dollar amount or whether it's a percentage. And if you're considering this, I would think a dollar amount would be more appropriate. And if you can set up a procedure in which this really ought to come to the attention of the council, I don't think you have to wait 2 weeks. This would be such a rare occasion, I'd like to believe, that we could call an emergency council meeting that we could conduct online. You just need a quorum of the council to do that. So I think if these things come up, we can get together and actually approve it, literally approve it. Let the committee consider that when they get together.
We would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Summerall.
I guess the only thing is as there has been, there needs to be a partnership between council and the group, because there needs to be, again, as there generally has been, there needs to be a count on your end to do everything possible to avoid what he just talked about. And that's 100% in your control, not ours, right? And so that might mean asking our contractors to, we need to know this stuff sooner, right? We need to have eyes in the future better about this so that we can, so not everything's an emergency. And again, over the 2.5 years I've been doing this, you guys have gotten way better, way better at this. And so whatever you've done, keep doing that. I just don't want what Bob said to be licensed to kind of relax and get a little bit sloppy, and so that, we know at the, I know you're not, I just want to be out there on the record saying that the emergency meeting is exactly that. It probably shouldn't happen every year, right? So keep doing what you're doing. That is an option, but that's not an invitation to slack off on the rigor that you guys put around getting these to us as soon as you can within the regularly scheduled programming.
Okay, maybe I'm a little confused about that, but what I would love to have is somewhere to go to get approval for small things like this, right? So if you look at this change order, for instance.
So let me stop you there.
Okay.
Because that is on us. And I think this is a revisit of what we weren't able to push through 3-ish months ago when we started talking about, what does the mayor have authorization to sign for, right? What do we have to approve what do we have to approve versus not approve if something's falling within a budget? And I think this is another reason for us to get back on that and develop some policies around how that's going to be handled, which probably more than any other department will affect Parks and Public Works, because you guys spend all our money. But we'll go across all groups. So I would, that's on us to figure out. So you can save your breath on that. And I think I have an idea. Maybe we can talk about offline about how we might make that work.
Okay. Also say this was a very successful project for the city, I think, because of just the gains, the benefits that this project has done. And the way it came in, this is what we call a red zone project in engineering. It's that lots of different facilities that were being upgraded and new facilities in that $5 to $15 million range. Those are typically very risky projects. Sometimes they often get over budget. So we came in at 1.6. That's outstanding. Under 2% is considered outstanding.
Well, with this project, for the first time in several years, we'll have a better best sciences treatment for biosolids, since the Fenton Dryer kind of blew up on us. Fenton Dryer was a Class A. Is this Class B or
They're
what's?
all Class B biosolids now.
Okay.
Right. So it'll reduce our hauling and disposal costs for biosolids now.
Yeah, but at least
By
we're not
quite a
hauling it to the dump
Yeah.
at great cost. All right, Councilmember Mayhew?
Yeah, notwithstanding the concerns I raised or ways that we can sort of improve how we're kind of reporting and working together, I just want to say a $12 million project is not a small project for the city. Fantastic job coming in very close to budget. I think you and your team just deserve a great thanks from us and from the city, and thanks for doing a great job on this.
And we can't wait to tour it.
Yes, I would love to give you guys a tour. At closeout, I was planning to give maybe a better presentation than, well, I didn't give the presentation, but yeah, I'll give you a presentation. And I'd love to give you guys a tour of it because it's a really nice facility.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shepherd?
I was just going to say, how much are we saving on the biosolids?
Haven't got that totally figured out yet because we haven't done a year's worth of, but in the range of $200,000 to $300,000 a year.
Oh, so that more
Hauling
than
and
makes up
disposal.
the 90-some thousand dollars.
It'll, yeah, right, that's right.
Yeah, good point. That's a great point. All right, Jeff, thank you. If there's no further discussion, council, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. All right, I think we picked up all but one of the consent agenda items. Are there any other items for Parks and Public Works or any other report?
Nothing at the time.
All right, Community Development Committee report.
Nothing to report.
Finance Administration Committee, warrants. Need a motion and a second to approve the warrants as stated in the agenda packet.
Move to approve warrants as presented in the council agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve warrants. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Seeing no one move forward, any discussion, council? Councilmember Shepherd.
So again, I don't have access to asking questions when I'd like to ask questions, and I have to go through the filter of the F&A committee. And
That is the audit committee, but go ahead.
yeah, and so I want to pull it off the consent agenda so I can vote no.
All right, Councilmember Holloway.
So I'm confused. We had, I believe it was either 4 or 5 questions from you. We, none were pertinent to the warrants themselves, but were procedural questions. And we asked staff to get with you to describe those procedural questions. In the 5th item, we determined that the question asked was below our level of accountability on the account numbers. And secondarily, you were unable at that time to point out where the issue was you were highlighting. So I'm confused why you say you're not getting your answers for the questions you have submitted.
Oh, I still have answered questions from a year ago that haven't been answered.
I'm going to ask the council member to direct her comments to the chair so we don't get into sort of a debate between council members.
Okay, so just in general, it's been an issue, and it's something that in other cities, normally a council member should be able to go to the finance director and ask questions and get answers. It shouldn't have to go to a committee.
And I will say for the record that any questions that were not addressed by the committee were addressed by the finance officer and finance staff, to my knowledge. Bob, I don't know if you can confirm.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion, council, Councilmember Mayhew?
Just remind the council that we do have a council procedure that we've passed within the last year that specifies exactly how we go through the warrant approval process, and that's exactly what we did for these warrants.
All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nope.
All right, motion passes 5-1. All right, I don't think there's anything else left on the consent agenda.
No further report from FNA.
All right, thank you. Public Safety Committee, any other report for Public Safety Committee?
No further report.
All right. Committee of the Whole, Councilmember Jeans, I'll throw it over to you for the item you added.
So we as a council committed to the public that we would conduct 4 town hall meetings during the course of this year. We've done 2. It's time to have our 3rd town hall meeting. The date has been a moving target, but now mark your calendars for October 10th, which is a Thursday. The location is the Mount Si High School. I think we might have a location in the high school, but that seemed to be a moving target. But in any event, it'll be one of the public spaces there. And the topic generally is the future of Snoqualmie. We had one time titled it Snoqualmie 2050, but we have a facilitator that we're working with, a facilitator that did our second town hall meeting, and so we're working on those things. We meet again this week to put the final touches on that town hall meeting. But please mark your calendars, and I hope you'll be available. Again, when we do this town hall meeting, it is not any presentation that we as council members will make, but it is our participation as listeners, essentially, to hear what citizens have to say. And I'll ask my two other council member, committee members to add anything.
Councilmember Sewell?
The only thing I'd say is we were talking about Snoqualmie 2050, and then we decided we want people to actually come. So that might be a little far out there, since I don't know how many of us will be here on planet Earth in 2050. But it's going to be a much more, I think, actionable, 3, 5, 10 years. What if you've got a 5-year-old? What are things going to look like when he or she is graduating from high school, type thing, right? What services are we missing? And we'll have the moderator. Her name is Una, and her accent gets her instant credibility. That she will be doing another just fantastic job of moderating that. We will be even more flies on the wall than we were at the community center expansion thing, and we're just listening. So we're really excited to see what the public has to say inside the newest building in this city and the largest construction undertaking in the history of the city. So I think it's going to be a fantastic setting as we look to the future of Snoqualmie and the most futuristic high school, or perhaps place of education at any level that I've ever been in. And so I'm really excited about it.
Great. Councilmember May.
And I would just add, as we've been putting this together, it's similar to what happened with the community center discussion, which is our last community meeting, which is there's some information which will be given to the citizens, to the residents, and then most of the meeting will then be trying to get information back from the residents. So I think they'll definitely get something out of it in terms of new information, and then have a fantastic opportunity to give input into us about what they want to see in the future. So I'm really excited about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember James. Councilmember Ross, did you want to give a brief SC report at all?
I do have a very brief one. So I forwarded out to the council the Sun City Association Public Issues Committee packet. And there's several items in that packet that are good information for you. One is about the PSRC Vision 2050, and it includes the letters from the cities on their guiding principles, what they would actually like to see in the plan. So if I were you, review that before October 10th. Second, there's proposed King County Regional Homelessness Authority that was recently unveiled at a press conference about a week ago, featuring King County Executive, the Seattle Mayor, along with others. And this regional authority would create a public development authority. A steering committee and governing board would oversee the public development authority. And so, again, it's an approach to regional homelessness, but at this point, we don't know what the impact will be for the Snoqualmie Valley. So we're going to wait to see how it impacts us. And finally, in that packet, there's information regarding Initiative 976 that will appear on the November 5th general election ballot. And if you're not familiar with that, it is limiting vehicle license and registration fees to $30. So Snoqualmie's Transportation Benefit District, which is funded through the registration fees, would be eliminated, impacting the city by $200,000 annually. The Snoqualmie Valley Record actually just put an article out there today about, it provides information regarding the impact to local and state transportation funding. So I would suggest just, reading that article, and I'm sure you'll see all kinds of additional information coming out within the next month before the ballot. So that's
Well, I would add to that, there's some polling on that, as I understand, is starting to show some more public support for approving the elimination of the car tab fee, which would be very impactful to us. So to get that message out there, one question that would be posed to the council is that you do have the ability to take up an item and do a resolution and, make a statement on that to the public as to whether you're opposed or for or against initiatives like that in the public. So something to consider, perhaps for our next council meeting. All right. Anything else, Councilman Ross?
That is it, thank you.
All right, thank you. Lastly, just as noted, the reports are written at the first of the month, but at this time, is there any other questions for or from any of the staff? All right, just a few announcements then before we conclude. A number of things coming up on Wednesday's kind of a busy day. Really encourage the council members to consider attending 2 events on Wednesday. One is the Chamber Luncheon. Councilmember Sunwall mentioned the exciting new building at the high school. The next new exciting one, I think, coming to our town is the new hockey arena. And the folks that are building that are going to be the presenters at the chamber. So I think it'll be kind of exciting to hear what they have to say about that coming facility. And then followed on Wednesday evening will be the Snoqualmie Valley Governments Association meeting up in Duval. And so I know a few of you have already signed up for that. And then on Saturday, Congresswoman Kim Schreier will be hosting a sort of a meet your Congresswoman meeting right here in the council chambers at 10 a.m. So I'll be down here to welcome and greet her, and certainly encourage any of you, if you have the time, to come by and pay your respects and check in and say hi to her. And that's, I think, welcome. Anybody from the public's welcome to come meet with her as well. With that, are there any other announcements, Bob?
Mayor, you may want to also mention the other event that's on Saturday that was presented to the council a couple meetings ago from Emily Ridout on the Love Snoqualmie Valley.
That's on October 5th, I believe.
It's October 5th.
Right. If you don't announce it tonight, they won't know about it. There won't be another council meeting before then. But,
Oh, okay, good point. Yeah, so October 5th, if you don't know, love our Snoqualmie Valley. You could even sign up to be part of the crew getting down here at 6:30 in the morning to help set things up, and then pivot into some sort of one of the service events at 9 o'clock if you'd like as well. So encourage everyone to participate. Hoping she'll get big numbers on that, and hopefully we can increase those efforts and assist more next year. Any other announcements before we conclude? Councilmember Jeans?
So for that Green Snoqualmie event, I've heard 2 locations where people are supposed to meet. Where is it?
my understanding, it's a King Street lot. That's
Yeah.
that's where they're organizing.
That's where so they partnered with the Love Our Snoqualmie Valley event, Bob, our Councilmember Jeans, and so everybody's to meet there, and then you can head out. I signed up for the same event, and it wasn't clear which one they're going to allocate me to or you to, so I'm just trusting they'll figure that out and send us either to Sandy Cove or up to Jeannie Hansen Park that day. So I think both Mount Sound Greenway and Forterra are working on those 2 projects, so you'll get thrown in with one team or the other. Any other questions, comments, announcements? All right, I don't believe there's any other business to come before the council, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn the meeting tonight. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
What am I supposed to do now?
Lost, they're flailing.
Might get a run in after all.
What are we going to do with all this time?